HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Menendez Murders, the shocking untold story of the Menendez family and the killings that stunned the nation. By Robert Rand. Read by Eric Martin. Part 1. Murder in Beverly Hills. Chapter 1. Nightmare on Elm Drive. I think that possibly if Lyle and I would have been home, if we would have been able to do something about it, maybe my dad would be alive. Maybe I'd be dead, you know? I mean, I don't know. I wish I definitely would give my life for my dad's. Erik Menendez, speaking to author in October 1989, 2 months after the death of Jose and Kitty Menendez. On the night of August 20th, 1989, the last in the lives of Jose and Kitty Menendez, their elegant residential street in Beverly Hills was so still you could hear a leaf drop. That in itself was not unusual or suspicious. People pay a steep price to live in such neighborhoods, and they cherish their peace and quiet. That particular Sunday was a leisurely, relaxed day around the house for the Menendezes, an affluent couple in their mid-40s. Jose, a powerfully built, handsome Cuban émigré who left Havana at age 16, was the chief executive of Live Entertainment, a leading Hollywood home video distributor. He sat on the board of Live's parent company, Carolco Pictures, producer of the Rambo and Terminator movies. Mary Louise, who'd been called Kitty since she was a child, was a stay-at-home mother. Their 2 college-age sons, Erik and Lyle, spent the day swimming and playing tennis behind the family's lushly landscaped 9,000-square-foot, 8-bedroom beige Mediterranean-style mansion at 722 North Elm Drive in a fashionable neighborhood just below Sunset Boulevard. 8 months earlier, the Menendez family had moved to Beverly Hills from Calabasas, a suburb northwest of Los Angeles. Before that, they'd spent a dozen years living in the Princeton, New Jersey area. In June 1989, 18-year-old Erik graduated from Beverly Hills High School. He was about to enroll at the University of California, Los Angeles, and planned to commute to UCLA's nearby Westwood campus. 21-year-old Lyle was a student at Princeton University. Both young men were highly ranked amateur tennis players with professional aspirations. When Perry Berman arrived at his West Hollywood apartment just after 1 p.m. on August 20th, 1989, there was an answering machine message from Lyle Menendez. Berman, a friend and former tennis coach of the brothers, had frequently met them for movies or dinner since moving to California from New Jersey. When Berman returned the call, Jose Menendez told him Erik and Lyle were out shopping at the Beverly Center, a nearby upscale shopping mall. Lyle called Berman back around 5 p.m. and suggested they get together that evening. Berman was planning to attend the Taste of L.A., a food festival in Santa Monica. He was leaving within the hour and invited Erik and Lyle to join him and a friend, Todd Hall. The brothers were going to the movies, said Lyle, to see Batman. He suggested they all meet about 10 p.m. at the food festival. After eating dinner at home, the brothers walked out the back gate to Erik's white Ford Escort parked in an alley behind the property and drove to the AMC Multiplex at Century City Shopping Center. Around 10 p.m., Jose and Kitty were settled in the family room watching a James Bond movie, The Spy Who Loved Me, on a big screen TV. It was the housekeeper's night off, and they were spending a rare evening alone. People close to the family said the couple's marriage appeared to be improving lately. One relative noticed they were holding hands again, something she hadn't seen since their college days. As he watched the movie, Jose Menendez put his feet up on the coffee table and started to doze off. Kitty was seated next to him. The house was equipped with an alarm system, but Jose rarely turned it on. His sons were always setting it off by accident. Besides, he felt safe in Beverly Hills. The French doors behind the couch were closed. Just after 10 p.m., a neighbor, Avril Crom, heard popping sounds like Chinese firecrackers quickly going off in a row. Crum noted the time because she was anxiously waiting for her daughter Jennifer to return at 10:30 from a neighbor's house. Her 12-year-old son, Josh, was watching a TV movie. He wanted to call 911, but his mother didn't think anything of this noise that barely interrupted the crickets' chirping. The idea of gunshots just didn't fit in this neighborhood. But it wasn't firecrackers. 2 people had burst into the Menendez family room through the double doors located off the foyer and begun firing 12-gauge Mossberg shotguns. One of the intruders walked around the back of the couch, put the barrel of the massive gun to the back of Jose's head, and pulled the trigger. Kitty, terror-stricken, turned to find another gun near her mouth. Instinctively, she jumped up and raised a hand to protect herself, but to no avail. A blast catapulted her onto the floor. What transpired in that once welcoming family room was a brutal slaughter of a ferocity rarely seen outside the fields of war. There was blood spatter covering the couch, on the wall, on the wood window louvers, on the coffee table, and throughout the room. Wielding pump-action shotguns, as opposed to automatic weapons, the killers chose to stand in place and methodically pump shell after shell into the helpless couple. 5 blasts hit Jose. In addition to the point-blank shot to his head, he was struck in the chest, upper arm, and left elbow. A through-and-through wound of his left thigh left a gash 3 inches around. In the roboticized language of his autopsy, the brain had been predominantly eviscerated by the explosive decapitation of the gaping gunshot wound. Kitty tried to escape from her attackers, but was found lying on her right side, a few feet away from her husband's feet, her face an unrecognizable gelatinous mass. Every bone in her face was broken. Most of her teeth were shattered. She was ripped apart by 9, possibly 10 shots. One almost severed her right thumb. Her left leg, with a large wound at the knee, was broken and bent at a 45-degree angle. Her right leg was stretched out along the bottom shelf of the coffee table. Kitty's sweatshirt and pants were soaked with blood. Across town in Santa Monica, Perry Berman and Todd Hall left the Taste of L.A. at 10:20 p.m. Erik and Lyle Menendez never arrived. Perry Berman was already in bed when his phone rang 15 minutes later. Lyle Menendez wanted to know why he hadn't been at the food festival. Perry explained he'd waited until almost 10:30 p.m. "What happened to you guys?" he asked. "We got lost," replied Lyle. "We decided to drive downtown because we thought it was on 4th Street in downtown Los Angeles." After realizing they were in the wrong place, said Lyle, the brothers turned around and drove west on the Santa Monica Freeway, arriving at the festival much later than expected. "I feel bad we weren't able to get together, but let's go out during the week," said Perry. Lyle sounded apprehensive. He insisted he had to see Berman right away to discuss his tennis game, as well as his plan to return to Princeton in September. "Fine," said Berman reluctantly. "If it's that important to you, I'll meet you in half an hour at the Cheesecake Factory in Beverly Hills." Berman barely had time to get out of bed before Lyle called back. It would be better, he said, to meet at the Menendez mansion. Erik needed to pick up his fake ID so they could all have some beers. "Absolutely not," said Berman. "I'll give you an extra 10 minutes to pick up the ID and meet you at the Cheesecake Factory." When Erik and Lyle pulled up outside their home just after 11:30 p.m., the electric gate on the black wrought iron fence surrounding the property was open. The front door was unlocked. The brothers later told police they thought their parents might be out walking the dogs, since their 2 Mercedes, one of them on loan from a local shop while one of the family's cars was being serviced, were in the courtyard next to Lyle's red Alfa Romeo. The lights in the 2-story entry foyer were on. The first thing they noticed inside was a gray cloud of smoke hanging lazily in the air. It was a routine Sunday evening for the two operators monitoring 911 calls at Beverly Hills Police Department headquarters. The phones had been silent for over half an hour when BHPD dispatcher Christine Nye answered a call from a distraught young man at 11:47 p.m. Dispatch. Beverly Hills emergency. Caller. Yes, police, scream in background. No. Dispatch. What's the problem? Caller, sobbing. Somebody killed my parents. Dispatch. Pardon me? Caller. Somebody killed my parents. Dispatch. What? Who? Are they still there? Caller. Yes. Dispatch. The people who... Caller. No. Sobs. Dispatch. Were they shot? Caller. Erik, man, stay. Dispatcher. Were they shot? Caller. Yes. Dispatcher. They were shot. Caller. Yes. Sobbing. Dispatcher. Dispatching police units. 2 minutes after the 911 call, Beverly Hills Patrol Officer Mike Butkus and his partner John Charnocki received an urgent dispatch. Reported shooting at a residence. Approach with extreme caution. Shooters may still be present. Turning north off Santa Monica Boulevard onto Elm Drive, they quietly drove past the Menendez mansion. After parking 2 doors away, they silently watched the house from outside the open front gate. Suddenly, the patrolman heard screaming inside. A moment later, 2 young men came running out the front door, side by side, directly toward the officers. A startled Butkus ordered the pair to sit down and get on the ground. The men complied immediately. The only illumination came from the old-fashioned street lamps that looked charming but shed little light. Butkus didn't notice any blood on their clothes. Erik and Lyle Menendez appeared to be distraught. "Oh, my God, I can't believe it! Oh, my God, I can't believe it!" they screamed repeatedly. At one point, having stood up, the brothers dropped to their hands and knees and began pounding the ground with their fists. For several minutes, Butkus couldn't get a coherent word out of them. Suddenly, they frantically pointed at the house and made an anguished plea. "Just go see! Go in and see!" Perry Berman was early when he pulled up to the Cheesecake Factory just past 11:30 p.m. He sat in his car, waiting. A few minutes later, Berman went inside and saw people vacuuming carpets and cleaning tables. He asked if anyone had seen 2 young men come in, describing them as about 20 years old, dark hair, 6 feet tall. "No, not at all in the last hour," a hostess told him. When he walked outside, Berman heard the high-pitched shriek of police sirens and decided to drive over to the Menendez mansion. As he turned onto North Elm Drive, Berman was startled to see police cars with flashing lights up and down the street. He became extremely alarmed when he saw officers with drawn guns crouched behind the trees of the Menendezes' neighbors. Investigators thought there might still be suspects hiding inside the mansion and decided to send a search party through the house. When the search team entered the marble foyer, they observed athletic bags and clothes dropped haphazardly on the floor. To the left of the front door was a small wood-paneled sitting room. As one officer watched the front door and stairwell, the rest of the group cautiously made a sweep of the formal living room with their flashlights. Sergeant Kirk West approached the family room at the end of the hallway. Some lights were on, and West thought he heard a TV or radio. He made a quick visual check of the bodies. Both had multiple gunshot wounds to the head and chest. West didn't have to touch them. He knew they were dead. The size of the wounds made it obvious that a shotgun had been used in the attack, although there were no expended shells on the gold oriental rug or polished parquet floor. Veteran homicide investigators say that the average person who walks into a house and discovers 2 brutally murdered bodies will run outside immediately and call police from a neighbor's phone. Most people are afraid the killer might still be there. Still, Erik and Lyle's emotional distress appeared to be genuine. Because of their compassion for the agitated brothers, detectives decided to forego routine chemical tests that would have determined if either of the young men had fired a gun that night. Investigators quickly ruled out a murder-suicide by conducting gunshot residue tests on Jose and Kitty. Maurice Angel was on patrol with his partner Mike Dillard when a radio call was broadcast shortly before midnight reporting a shooting at 722 North Elm Drive. By the time Mo Angel arrived, there were already several other officers on the scene. BHPD Lieutenant Frank Salcido assigned the soft-spoken, heavy-set, balding patrolman to watch the brothers. Both were hysterical. Initially, they'd been placed on the ground, patted down, and searched with their hands behind their backs. Angel watched curiously as Erik rammed his head into a tree several times before trying to sprint away and run back inside. Lyle, seemingly more in control, restrained his younger brother each time. Unquestionably in shock, Erik shouted out fragmentary phrases. "I'm going to kill them. I'm going to torture them. Who would do this? We're going to get those guys." "Who are you going to get?" asked Angel. He had the impression Erik seemed to know the identity of the killers, but there were no answers. Mo Angel didn't want to push it. He thought both brothers were frightened sheep. Lyle was calm enough to give investigators his parents' names and his father's occupation. He said the driveway gate was open when he and Erik arrived home. Normally it was always closed. As Lyle anxiously chattered on, Angel felt they were developing a rapport. Lyle described his father's work associates in the movie business as seedy. Jose Menendez had been harassed day and night, Lyle said, in person and over the phone, by the people he worked with. Lyle also mentioned his father was stressed out after unexpectedly returning home from a road trip a few days earlier. The patrolman avoided discussing what happened in the house, but both brothers kept asking about the condition of their parents. They demanded to know why the paramedics and the police were taking so long. "I told them in a humanistic way they were gone," Angel recalled later. As the ambulances loaded with the bodies flashed down North Elm Drive just before dawn, dumbfounded neighbors stood helplessly on their magnificent lawns. "Please tell me he's a drug dealer," pleaded a woman who lived nearby. Another kept repeating, "Things like this just don't happen here." But it had happened here, in beautiful, elegant Beverly Hills. The town averages 2 murders a year. In a few brief moments, 1989's quota had been filled. Chapter 2. No suspect or suspects. No weapon or weapons. Whoever shot Jose and Kitty Menendez left behind few clues, but Mo Angel, the patrolman assigned to watch Erik and Lyle immediately after the murders, didn't think the brothers were being totally straight. He thought they might know who the killers were. At times, the brothers' anguished hysteria seemed a bit overboard. While he was obviously watching them, they were frantic, but when he looked away, they were calm and talked in hushed whispers. In Angel's years as a street cop, he had seen a lot of grief, but to him, this didn't fit. Angel was curious about inconsistencies in the brothers' story of where they had been earlier that evening. When Lyle repeated it, he changed the times and locations and order of events. Lyle said that they went to a wine tasting near the Santa Monica Convention Center, but the person they were supposed to meet didn't show. Next, he said they'd gone to a movie in Century City. Since the gate to their house was open, Angel asked why they'd parked their car on the street. "We were planning to go out again," they told him. An hour after the 911 call, Erik and Lyle were asked to speak to detectives at the Beverly Hills police station, and Angel offered to drive them there. The brothers wanted to drive themselves. Angel ended up taking them in his patrol car. Angel sensed that they were nervous and scared. They constantly asked questions like, "What is going on? When can we leave?" Sergeant Tom Edmonds, detective supervisor for the Beverly Hills Police Robbery and Homicide Squad, had been jarred out of a sound sleep by a phone call just after midnight. There was a shooting with 2 people down. Edmonds got to police headquarters just after 1 a.m. Tall, slim, and graying, in his Western-style jacket and cowboy boots, he resembled the actor Dennis Weaver. Angel introduced the brothers to Edmonds as the sons of the victims. Edmonds asked for their ID. Lyle was not taking it as badly as Erik, and Edmonds tried to calm the younger brother. Before they agreed to talk to police, the brothers spoke briefly with their tennis coach, Mark Heffernan. Erik had contacted him while Lyle made the 911 call. He wanted Heffernan or Lyle to sit with him during the interview. No, Edmonds said. At 1:20 a.m., Edmonds brought out a small Panasonic audio tape recorder and began by gently asking Erik what time he'd left home earlier in the evening to go out. "We weren't going to leave home. We decided to leave home, and we left home at 8. We got to the movie. We ended up seeing Batman. That was at the AMC Century 14 theaters at the Century City Shopping Center. We were going to stop at home quickly, so we pulled in front, we pulled in the driveway, we pulled in the side, and the gate was open, and we went inside, and I was smelling smoke. After that we saw them, and immediately I started screaming, and so I went upstairs, and Lyle called the police immediately." The front gate to the black wrought-iron fence surrounding the property opened with a clicker. Edmonds asked whether it was closed when they left home. Erik said they'd left out the back alley near the guest house. "Was it locked?" "I don't think so." "Did you use your key to get in?" "No, I don't think so. I think the door was unlocked." Edmonds asked Erik if he had any ideas of who might have done the murders. Not right now, I don't know. We should have just stayed in." Erik was crying, so the interview ended. Edmonds did manage to get him to admit that he called Heffernan from his bedroom, which was upstairs and had its own telephone line. Erik babbled about his puppy that was missing. Then he asked, "Are they dead?" "Yes," Edmonds told him. As he came out of the conference room, Erik whispered to his brother, "It's okay, you can talk to him." At 1:42 a.m., the sergeant started by asking Lyle Menendez about earlier Sunday. After Lyle told him a story that resembled Erik's account of the day's events, Edmonds asked Lyle about finding the bodies. "And I thought it was strange in a way, and, I smelled smoke everywhere. I sort of looked around, and I remember I was only in there for a few minutes, and I sort of checked my mother out and left, and the smell was bad, and I ran back to my bedside, and I didn't see anything, and I ran back in, and my brother was standing there. He was downstairs in the room." He called police right away. "As soon as I got my brother, I went to tell my brother and went upstairs and called 911, and the police responded pretty quick." "Why did you go upstairs to call us? Isn't there a phone downstairs?" "Yeah, my brother ran upstairs, so I ran after him, and he was crying, screaming, so I just ran into my mother's room and I called, and then I came into his room and he was on the phone." Edmonds asked Lyle if he had any ideas that could help the police solve the crime. "We have to get personal, you understand. If there's any problems, we've got to solve this. Well, one of my concerns is that I don't like any bad press about my father now." Edmonds assured him that they were policemen, not reporters. "So you've got to help us." Lyle answered that he'd already considered that it might have been a robbery, as Mark Heffernan had suggested to him, but it didn't look like that. It looked like they definitely wanted to make a mess, and it was really, sad. But unless police discovered there were items missing, it would be my father that would be the reason that it would happen. He said that Jose had worked for RCA Records, but had since gone to work for a smaller company with a group of people that, from the stories that he brings home and the people that I've met, these are a real seedy group. And even though he was very aware of that, and, I don't know if anyone would ever try to kill my father, my dad is a pretty ruthless businessman, and he believes in the bottom line. Do you know any specific people that your dad has had business problems with these smaller companies that are getting squeezed? Edmonds asked. I could see how he could step on a lot of toes. He's very curt. He treats my brother and I, extremely well, but firm. And he's a strong disciplinarian. He holds the family together well, and he runs the show. At work, it's the same way, He yells at a lot of people, and he's running the show, and he handles everything. His father was a great man, said Lyle. He did all these... He had full control of his life. He did what he wanted, and, my mother was a great tragedy in all of this. How is that? Well, that's the hardest thing for me. I mean, her death, because she never really got to do anything with her life, She sort of served it with my father. I don't think he's treated her very well. When things were kind of getting better, he was at home more often and stuff, and we just went on a fishing trip, and the family seemed more together. About his mother. She seemed real worried about things. In fact, she recently bought a rifle, and so we had 2 rifles in the house, and we thought that she was nervous about something because she went out and just bought a rifle and didn't tell my dad why or anything, and that's the first thing I suspected when I walked in the house. The brothers had said they'd smelled smoke when they came in. Only my brother and I know this, but she was on the verge of contemplating suicide. She was very edgy and suicidal in the last few years, but she seemed very stable recently. My dad's been fine, so I never really got a chance to sit down and talk. Chapter 3. Living in Fear, Hollywood and the Mob. Les Zoller woke up tired. He'd snuck in a short nap Monday afternoon after being up all night Sunday processing the crime scene. The Baltimore native had left the relatively quiet, routine crimes of Gardena, California, 14 years ago for the big time as a detective in America's richest city. His specialty was homicide, but his talents were unappreciated in Beverly Hills. The athletic-looking 37-year-old detective with thick, neatly trimmed brown hair parted down the middle and a bushy mustache had made the big cases before. Months of good, solid door-to-door detective work had solved the Billionaire Boys Club murders. The BBC was a Ponzi scheme created to support the lavish lifestyles of its wealthy young members. When money ran short, 2 people were killed as the club tried to raise money. When Zoller arrived at the Menendez murder scene just after 2 a.m., the brothers were already being interviewed at Beverly Hills Police Headquarters. Zoller's first encounter with Erik and Lyle came at 5:30 Monday morning. The brothers pulled up in a taxi and announced they needed to pick up some tennis equipment. They weren't allowed in the house, which was still swarming with crime scene technicians. Zoller asked them to come back at 8:30 a.m. When they returned, the detective warned them not to go in the den. The bodies of Jose and Kitty had been removed, but the blood-soaked couch and rug, gruesome evidence of the violent attack that ended their lives, was still there. Zoller's supervisor, Tom Edmonds, had someone wake Perry Berman at 4:30 a.m. and order him to come to the Beverly Hills police station immediately. Edmonds believed Berman might be their primary suspect. It was nothing, he said, but the veteran detective simply considered Berman's demeanor suspicious. He stuck out like a sore thumb, Edmonds would testify later. He's definitely not an Academy Award-winning actor. He made a lackluster performance of grief. Edmonds thought Perry Berman was a phony. After interviewing Berman, he drove over to Elm Drive to survey the crime scene. Edmonds still felt a little ill about the interviews he'd conducted earlier with the traumatized sons of the victims. Later, he would admit he screwed up and probably should have given Erik and Lyle gunshot residue tests. After Les Zoller told him that a window was broken in the family room where Jose and Kitty died, Edmonds remembered that both brothers mentioned they'd seen and smelled smoke. From experience, he knew gun smoke wouldn't linger long in a room with a broken window. He didn't find out until 24 hours later that the killers had carefully...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?